welcome to CEC eGurukul lecture series. I'm Neeti Bhutani from Hindu College, University of Delhi. Okay, we have proven now in our definition the first part of the equality, which is that a to the power p by q is equal to the expression the qth root of a raised to the power p. Now let's show that this alternative way of calculating things will also work, so that we can use either one of these definitions. So how can we do that? Again, in the same rule, instead of putting r equal to 1 by q, let's now put r equal to p and let's put s equal to 1 by q. Now if I put r equal to p and s equal to 1 by q, what will I get? A to the power p, the whole thing raised to the power 1 by q, and by rule 2, the fundamental power rule, that is going to be equal to a to the power p times 1 by q. So that is again a to the power p by q. So basically what I'm trying to say is that these expressions, these definitions give you two alternative ways of calculating fractional powers. Okay, so let's see how this works. Let's apply this to some numbers. Let's bring in some numbers. Okay, so let us suppose I want to calculate 16 to the power 3 by 4. One way of doing this is that I take the fourth root of 16. I'm using this definition above. I'm taking the fourth root of 16, right, which is 2, and then raise it to the power 3. So that's going to give me 2 to the power 3, which is 8. Alternatively, I could first raise 16 to the power 3, right? So I take a to the power p, which is to say I take 16 to the power 3, and then I take the fourth root of 16 to the power 3. Now if you can see here what the numbers are like, and actually you should be doing these calculations yourself, this method actually becomes a little cumbersome, because here you're dealing with big numbers. 16 to the power 3 is 4096, and then you have to take the fourth root, so that gives you and 8 as well, but certainly the first way of doing things is easier, because first you just get, by taking the fourth root or whichever qth root, you bring the number down considerably, and then you raise it to whichever power you are asked to raise. Okay, so this is, I just wanted to illustrate how these rules work. Okay, so this is a statement of the rule. This was my note 1 for fractional powers. Okay, and there you are. So as I was saying, that you could have situations where you could even calculate fractional powers for a negative a, and yes, you can do that if p is an integer and q is an odd number. Okay, so q is an odd number. If let's say q still has to be a natural number, but it has to be an odd number or an odd natural number. So then a to the power p by q can be defined even when a is negative. So let's see how that works. Let's suppose I have minus 8 and I'm raising it to the power 2 by 3. So clearly that conforms to my assumptions. P is an integer, p is 2, and 3 is an odd number. So I can calculate it as minus 8 to the power 1 by 3, which is minus 2, and then I can take the square of minus 2, so that gives me a 4. Okay, the other way, I can also use the other way of doing things. So clearly I can calculate my fractional powers even with a negative a, and that is what I was trying to say, that for specific values, if we put certain constraints on what q is or p is, then yes, there are some values of there are values of a, negative values, for which you could do your calculations for exponents. Okay, so minus 8 to the power 2 by 3, the alternative way is you first raise minus 8 to the power 2, which gives you a 64, and then you take the third root, which is 4. Okay, so any one of these two ways you can do. Now, very often people use a calculator to do these calculations. So this is something I just wanted to talk about. Sometimes, you put in these numbers, these formulas in Excel sheets or calculators, but calculators start doing something strange. And this is what we found even here. So if you look at this slide here, I tried to calculate minus 8 to the power 2 by 3 by look here, I took this, I entered this formula, I took minus 8 and raised it to the power 2 by 3, and I get this error here. It says calculation outside of accepted range. In fact, I tried doing this even with Excel. So in the Excel, in one of the cells, I entered -8 to the power 2 by 3, and I got this error, which is basically saying that the numbers in the formula are numerically invalid. So what is happening here? So we rely so much on technology to do our calculations, and here we are getting errors for expressions that seem to be perfectly valid. So the problem here is that very often, this is again something to do with technology. We feed in some algorithms, so calculators or the softwares, they work with algorithms which are supposed to do things the fastest. But sometimes the fastest route, as we are seeing here, the fastest route may not be the best way, because probably, if I'm understanding things right, the software or the calculator is first looking at 2 by 3, which is going to be 0.666, and that's just going to be a repeating non-terminating decimal. And then when it raises -8 to the power 2 by 3, it just gets into a mess. The computer chokes. So this is something that I just wanted to point out, because we all rely so much on technology these days. So yes, so then what I did was, in the Excel sheet, I then broke up the formula. I took -8 to the power 1/3 first, right? And well, here actually I don't think my explanation will be so, I think it's just some algorithm which is being used in the background. So here it works. So -8 to the power 1/3, the whole thing raised to the power 2, here you get the right answer, which is 4. Or alternatively, even if you use a formula -8 to the power 2 and the whole thing raised to the power 1/3, here also you get the right answer, which is 4. And similarly with the calculator also, if you just break the formula down, then the answer does come out to be 4. You get the right answer. So yeah, I just wanted to bring this to your attention. And with that, now we move on to irrational exponents. So we have talked about rational exponents so far, and let's now see what it means to have irrational powers. Here, calculations can get mathematically tedious, and also we use this this concept of limits to calculate irrational powers. Now, because you haven't covered the concept of limits yet in this particular series, I'm sure you would have done it in school, but because you haven't covered it in this series, I will not get into too much detail for irrational exponents, but I'll just give you a general idea as to how exactly we go about doing our calculation with irrational exponents. So here again, let's take the base as some positive number. Let's suppose that number is 2, and let's suppose we want to calculate 2 to the power pi. As the first step, we will write down the decimal representation of pi. Pi is 3.1415926 and so on. It's a non-repeating, non-terminating decimal, which is what makes it an irrational number. Now, what we do with this decimal representation is we form a sequence of rational numbers. So we will take a series of terminating decimals, okay, and we'll take a sequence of rational numbers, terminating decimals, that gets closer and closer to this number pi. So we can start with, let's say, 3.1, that's a rational number, 3.14, 3.141, 3.1415. So I'm just extending things by 1 decimal point in each step, 3.14159, and so on. So I have this sequence of rational numbers which is getting closer and closer to pi. Now what I'll do is, because ultimately I'm interested in calculating 2 to the power pi, for each one of these numbers that I have created in the sequence, I will raise 2 to each one of these numbers. So I'm going to calculate this sequence: 2 to the power 3.1, 2 to the power 3.14, 2 to the power 3.141, and so on. Okay, so let's do it. You can bring out your calculators and see what the numbers look like, and let's see what 2 to the power pi converges to. So if you look at these numbers, I have drawn this table. So 2 to the power 3.1 is this number here, 8.574188. So similarly, you can do the other calculations. 2 to the power 3.14, which is 8.8155241. then 2 to the power 3.141 is 8.821353. 2 to the power 3.1415 is 8 points. So we are converging to 8.82 something. So this becomes 8.824411. Then we have 2 to the power 3.1419, which is 8.8249. And you can just go on like this. But the point is that if you look at these values on the right hand side, these values, they converge to 8.825 approximately. So this is how we calculate irrational exponents. Okay, so I will not get into too much detail here, but I just wanted to give you a sense of things before we move on. And now, having discussed rational exponents, irrational exponents, I think we've covered it all. Let's now talk about power functions. So a power function is of the form f of x is equal to k times x to the power r, where x is greater than 0, x we're taking as positive, r, the exponent, is any real number, and that is precisely why we're taking x to be positive. I'll just come to that. And further, we are taking k, which is a coefficient, to be non-zero. We're taking k to be non-zero because if k is 0, what will happen is that we'll get f of x equal to 0. The function will just degenerate to a constant function, because if f of x is equal to 0, that's just saying that the value is a constant regardless of the value of x. So the function degenerates, and that is why we rule out k equal to 0. Now there are two things that I would like to point your attention to in power functions. The first, of course, is a domain of power functions, which is going to be of our main interest here in this lecture. And the second is this expression x to the power r, right, which is something which is very crucial, because this is the expression. It is in this expression that the key to understanding the difference between power functions and exponential functions lies. Why is that? So basically what happens is, when we take an expression of the form x to the power r in a power function, if you notice here, the independent variable x forms the base. So if we were to just generalize this to an expression a to the power r, the base a is here your independent variable. R, the exponent here, is a constant. So in a power function, the base varies, but the exponent is a constant. Whereas for an exponential function, it is the base that is a constant, whereas it is a power that varies. I will talk about this with the help of a diagram in one of the later slides again, but let me just put it in at the outset that this expression with x as the base, when the independent variable is the base, when it is a base that varies, that is what defines a power function. Here the exponent is a constant. Okay, so here again the warning comes, look out for the domain. So here, if you notice here, I've taken in this power function, and by the way, this is a general power function. This is a function where I've taken x to be positive, and here again the key lies in our assumption that we're allowing r to be any real number in this particular function. So let me just go over the arguments that I made earlier. So if r is any real number, then you could be in a situation, so I've actually put all these points down here step by step so that you understand. Let me walk you through these steps again, one by one. So if r is any real number, you may be in a situation where r is equal to half. Now if r is equal to half, then what does your function become? It becomes k times x to the power half, or k times root x. Now what happens here is that if you have a number under the square root sign, you can't take the square root of a negative number. So we have to restrict x to be greater than or equal to 0. So we can't take negative values of x. Similarly, if r is equal to 0, then what do we get? Our function becomes that x is the k is missing, so our function becomes f of x is equal to k. So that is then going to be equal to k, and that is something where I'm sorry, let me back up. So this is x to the power 0. So I'm taking k equal to 1, and if I take x to the power 0, then in an expression like this, I can't take x equal to 0 because 0 to the power 0 is not defined, right? So in situations like these, we have to avoid, we basically we're trying to avoid getting into situations where we can't take x as negative, or where we can't take x equal to 0. So what we do take is the intersection of the various possible domains for different subsets of R that could exist. So if we assume that R is any real number, then the intersection is x greater than 0, right? And here again, let me point out that this does not mean that we can't have a domain where which is a larger set. So you could have a domain where the set is larger than just the set of positive real numbers, but that would be for specific values of R and R that we take. And this is something we've already discussed. So for example, if R were a natural number, then we don't need any restriction on this x. So for example, if R were equal to 2, and we would just end up with x to the power 2 here, x squared here, and that's something for which we don't need a restriction on x. But here, because we are taking the exponent to be all real numbers, so that is an entire family, and in that sense we have to restrict x to be positive. Okay, let us look at some examples of power functions. One could be where the area of a circle, which is defined as a function of the radius x, that is given by pi times x squared. Here k is pi and you have x squared. Or in economics, you could think of a production function which relates your output given by f of x to, it should be an L in the parentheses here, f of L, which links the output f of L to the input usage, which is the amount of labor input used, represented by L. Similarly, you could have a demand function in economics which models the quantity demanded for a good as a function of P. So here it's given by 488 times P to the power minus 0.4. Similarly, a function like f of x is equal to x squared. That is also an example of a power function. But unlike the first example, for example, where I took a of x, the area of a circle, to be pi times x squared, here, because the radius is something which will have to be positive, in the last example, I can just let x be any real number. Okay, so that is also a criterion, because you can't have a labor input which is negative. Okay, so let's check your understanding. Which of the following functions are power functions? Clearly, x squared is a power function. F of x equal to 1 is also a power function, because here 1 is nothing but x to the power 0. So here k is equal to 1, and then you have x to the power 0, which is 1, and that's a constant, but it is very much a power function. Similarly, x cubed is a power function. X to the power 1/3 is a power function. But here, look at this function, x cubed minus x. This will not be a power function. This is a polynomial function. So if you look at a general polynomial of degree n, we've done this in the previous lecture. So p of x, if that is a general polynomial of degree n, then that is given by a sub n times x to the power n plus a sub n minus 1 times x to the power n minus 1, and so on. So here the a's are constants. A sub n is not equal to 0. And look here, n, the power to which x is raised, n here is a non-negative integer, because, and that is the key, because if you remember, when we take polynomials, we don't put any restriction on the variable x, because n here, the exponent, is a positive integer. So our first rule that we did in today's class was that if the exponent is a positive integer, then a can be, the base can be any number. So here x can be any real number. That was just to give you a sense of things, because we had talked about this earlier on in some lecture. Similarly, 1 by x is also a power function because here your k is 1 and your power exponent is minus 1. It's 1 by x is equal to x to the power minus 1. Similarly, square root of x is also a power function where the exponent is half. Okay, so the question now is 2 to the power x a power function? And as we just discussed that here when we talk of the expression, when we think of the expression a to the power r, a is the base and r is the exponent. So as I told you earlier, when we talk of a power function, and here for simplicity I've just taken k to be equal to 1. So for a power function we have the base as x. The independent variable appears as a base, so it is a base that varies, okay, and then that base that varies to a constant power that then determines the value of the function for that particular value x. Unlike a power function, an exponential function is one where the base is a constant. So if you notice here, I've taken a to be the base is a constant, but it is the power, it is the exponent that varies. So the independent variable appears as the exponent here for an exponential function. Now this is a very crucial difference between power functions and exponential functions, so please note this. And then that means that if I were to ask you if is the function f of x equal to 2 to the power x a power function, well clearly it can't be, because here 2 is the base and that is a constant. This function is actually an exponential function because it matches with a to the power x. Okay, the last part of our discussion is a discussion on the graphs of power functions. To keep things simple, I'm going to take k equal to 1, so that our function is defined as x to the power r. And here again, we are assuming because it's a general power function, x is greater than 0 and r is any real number. Now at the outset, the first thing you can notice straight away is that 1, 1 is going to be a point on any one of these graphs for any value of for any value of r, excuse me. So for example, if I put x equal to 1 here on the right hand side, then what am I going to get? F of 1 is equal to 1 to the power r, which is nothing but 1. So the first thing to note here about graphs of power functions, the general power function, is that the graph of the function passes through the point 1, 1 in the xy plane. The other point is that the shape of the graph of the power function, that depends crucially on the value of r. Now because we're allowing r to be any real number, let's see how the shape of the function varies with r, with the values that r takes. So if r lies in the open interval 0 to 1, then for example, just to visualize things, we could for example take r equal to half. So here you can see that this graph in yellow, that looks exactly like the graph of the equation y equal to square root of x. If I take r equal to half, I have the equation y is equal to square root of x, and this is the kind of graph you get for y equal to square root of x. Note here that I'm not including the origin here in the graphs, because we are taking x to be strictly positive, strictly greater than 0, x is positive. Okay, so if r is greater than 1, then what happens? Here again, to get a sense of things, let's take a number. So let's suppose r is equal to 2. If r is equal to 2, then our equation becomes y is equal to x squared, and this is exactly the kind of graph that you would get for y equal to x squared, but only here you have only that part of the parabola which lies in the first quadrant, because we are taking x to be positive. Finally, if we have r less than 0, then what will happen? We can take an example here. Let's suppose r is equal to minus 1. So then we get our equation becomes y equal to x to the power minus 1, or 1 by x, and that is nothing but a hyperbola. Yeah, but the point is, again, we won't take that part of the hyperbola which is in the third quadrant. We'll only take that part of the hyperbola which is in the first quadrant here for y equal to 1 by x, right? here we could also take two corner points. So for example, what happens if r is equal to 0? If r is equal to 0, then we'll get x to the power 0, which is 1, and that will simply be a constant function. So you just have a line which is parallel to the x-axis at y equal to 1. Similarly, we could also take into account a situation where r is equal to 1. So if r is equal to 1, that will simply give us a linear function, right? A straight line. Okay. And here we have a whole family of power functions, and a colorful one for that. You can see here that I have taken different powers for x. I'm restricting myself here to positive exponents, so I'm not taking into account r less than 0. But yes, if I take r equal to 1, I get this straight line, right? Y equal to x. If I take r equal to 2, I get this curve in red, r equal to 3, this curve in magenta here. And if I take r between 0 and 1, right, so this graph in yellow is the graph for square root of x, where r is equal to half, or I could take r equal to 1/3. Now, there are 2 points that you should note about this graph. First of all, the origin is not included, right, because we are taking x to be positive, so x can't be 0, and also that this graph is being entirely drawn in the first quadrant. That's the first point. The second point that you would have observed by now is that all of these graphs, they pass through 1, 1 in the xy plane, as I said a little while ago, that 1, 1 is going to be a point on all these graphs. So all these graphs intersect at 1, 1. Okay, so this is something I wanted to talk about for a general power function. But note that because this is a general power function, we have taken r to be all real numbers, and we've taken x to be positive. But as I said, if we take r to be subsets of certain subsets of real numbers or specific values, then we can allow our x, our domain, to be a larger set. And this is something that we will do in the next class, where we will take specific values of r, and we'll see how the functions look, how the graphs of the functions look for certain subsets of r, or certain values of r. But before I end, let me quickly do this particular example, and this is from the textbooks, it's Sater and Hammond. So this says that, in fact, you can even work on this on your own. This says that the formulas for the surface area S and the volume V of a ball with radius r are, the surface area is given by 4 pi r squared, and the volume is given by 4 by 3 pi r cubed. So here this question is asking you to express the surface area as a power function of V. So I've done this here. We have V is equal to 4 by 3 pi r cubed. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to first simplify for r, and I get 3V by 4 pi to the third root, and then I'll substitute this value of r that I found into the expression for S. So S is equal to 4 pi r squared, and then r squared would become 3V by 4 pi to the power 2/3, right? Because I'll get a 2 here when I take r squared, and once you simplify this, you have 4 pi in the numerator and 4 pi to the power 2/3 in the denominator, so that becomes 4 pi to the power 1/3. We get 3 to the power 2/3, and that times V to the power 2/3 once you open up the brackets. And if you just simplify this, you will get 4 to the power 1/3 times pi to the power 1/3 times 9 to the power 1/3. Yeah, I'm just taking a common exponent here so that I can just multiply these. So 3 to the power 2/3 is 9 to the power 1/3 times V to the power 2/3, and that is nothing but, so I can just, because the powers, the exponents are the same, I can just write this as 36 pi, 9 times 4 times pi, which is the third root of 36 pi, times V to the power 2/3. Okay, so this is that's it for our discussion of power functions. I hope you've been able to understand what was taught today, especially with respect to the domain of power functions. And in the next class, we will continue talking about the graphs of power functions, and we will also introduce exponential functions. In fact, if you've been following this all the news on the COVID-19 pandemic, there's been a lot of talk about exponential growth of the coronavirus infections or deaths, and that is simply to say that things are slow to begin with, and then there is explosive growth. So this is something which is quite relevant for what we are all going through these days, and this is something we'll cover in the next class. So exponential functions and graphs of power functions will be covered in the next class. Okay, and until then, goodbye, take care, and all the best.